Hey, this is David Brier, and I am thrilled to be talking with Brad Zales. Stay tuned, listen up, turn your headphones up, and turn everything else down.
A huge shift is taking place on planet Earth. People seem to be waking up. Tired of the way things used to be, they are creating something brand new and changing the world we live in. My name is Brad Zales, and I get to sit down with the next generation of idea makers, the disruptors, and the game changers. Everyday people, just like you and me, from all over, who are doing amazing things to Awakened Nation. Hey, everybody. I have a branding expert, the Brandfather himself, Mr. David Brier. Welcome to Awakened Nation, my friend.
Absolutely, man. Thank you, Brad. I'm thrilled. I mean, I know from when we talked the other day, we have very, very parallel paths in terms of the places we got our fingers dirty. So this is going to be a very interesting conversation for sure.
It's like we were separated at birth, brother.
I know, I know. I actually I did need to get your family a little bit of like, if you did an ancestry.com thing, I can kind of like check it out.
There you go. See where I really come from.
Yep.
Um, Ladies and gentlemen, buckle up. You're in for a great treat. If you're a branding expert, you're a small business owner, someone who's trying to wrap your head around, why graphics, marketing, and all these other things are incredibly important in growing your brand presence. Today is going to be a masterclass with David, and I'm very excited about this. And we have to give a big shout out to Jeremy Slate, Mr. Roman Empire himself, for introducing us. Thank you, Jeremy.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, I want to read your bio. You've had some amazing achievements and lived in New York City like I did. But I'm just going to dive right in. David started his career in Manhattan, working on brands for Estee Lauder, Revlon, Rolling Stone magazine, Jim Henson, and others. Since generating over 9.8 billion for global, regional, and local brands, including worldwide nonprofits and even cities, he's earned the nickname the Brand Father. You got to do your Marlon Brando later,
Yeah. No problem, him. No problem. We'll be talking.
Author of the Amazon bestseller Brand Intervention with a foreword by Damon John. He's been featured in Adweek, Fast Company, Forbes, Inc., Huffington Post, Entrepreneur, and the New York Times. Brand Intervention focused on building a brand. The new book that he has out now focuses on creating the kind of culture that can sustain and maintain that brand. And we're going to talk a lot today about what is a brand. The name of the follow-up book, and this is a genius title, folks. If you have followed Robert Kiyosaki, you understand how he's aligned this. Rich Brand, Poor Brand: How to Unleash Your David in a World of Goliaths, with the foreword written by Claude Silver of VaynerX and Gary Vaynerchuk's agency. And let's just dig in because, by the way, how did you get Damon John to write the foreword? Because I've worked with Damon, and I was just curious.
Yeah, totally. So, probably the first 2 years, and we're still big fans of Shark Tank, but the first 2 years of Shark Tank, that was like kind of my wife and that was our guilty pleasure. We would just like make sure we were at home to enjoy the show every week. And we just loved the way that the Sharks, one, how they vetted the person giving the pitch, two, how
Mhm.
they cross negotiated, three, how they counter negotiated and threw each other under the bus, et cetera, et cetera. And that was just a masterclass in real business.
Right.
And being a fan of that, at the time I had, and I still have the column, but I was writing a column for Fast Company magazine. And so I was like, I'm going to just, I really love the show and I want to kind of write what I see. I've always been very good at deconstructing and pulling things apart, like what makes this work, why this, not that, etc. I
Right.
was good at kind of dialing in on the things that were the levers that were actually the effective levers. So I looked at it and I was like, okay, what are the traits that go into the pitches that really land? The pitches that get the deals versus
Right.
the pitches that resulted in either Mark Cuban going off on something or alienating one of the other sharks.
Right.
And so I wrote this post, and it was a great analysis. It was really, really good. And within a day or two, before Twitter became X, Damon John tweeted, "This is the best article ever written on Shark Tank." And
Wow.
I did not know Damon at the time. I mean, other than seeing him on the show, I did not personally know
Right.
him. And I was like, holy shit, right? I'm like, immediately I'm into, whoa, a door's been opened. And so I immediately think, I'm like, all right, shit. I'm like, of course I leap on, and I'm like, thanks, dude. And he responds immediately. So I could tell this is before he has a team that's handling all this for him. He's
Right.
handling it. And so I immediately think, wow, how can I really elevate this opportunity? This is an open door. And I thought to myself, I want to do an interview with Damon. That would be a cool thing to do. So I'm gonna basically say, Damon, I'm gonna tell him, you need a slogan. You need and deserve a slogan. And but of course, before I sent him that message on Twitter, I thought of a brilliant freaking headline for my article on this, and that would function as a slogan.
Right.
And so I sent him the message, and he goes, "Yeah, man, I agree. Like what?" And I wrote back, "A Damon is a girl's best friend." And he freaking loved it.
That is
And
cool.
immediately we just like bam, we it was like, okay, kindred spirits. But then I learned later that he was born in Brooklyn and raised in Queens, and I was born in Brooklyn and raised in Queens. So we actually had a similar places geographical upbringing.
That's funny. Yeah, there's nothing like cutting your eye teeth in New York City. I got to tell you,
That's right.
I feel so blessed. But what a great story, man. I want to dig into something, but before we do, I love how you launched this new book, Rich Brand, Poor Brand, and I want to show the video that you put together to basically promote the book. And this is how it's done, baby. And those of you watching or listening, this is how it's done. Roll the tape.
The brand new book by David Brier is called Rich Brand, Poor Brand. It'll set you on fire. How to unleash your David in a world of Goliaths. The foreword is written by the amazing Claude Silver, Chief Heart Officer of VaynerX. With brilliant insights from today's great minds, Brené Brown, Damon John, Fubu, and Shark Tank, Frank Sinatra, Frank Zappa, Jerry Seinfeld, Kevin Hart, Marie Forleo, Muhammad Ali, Phil Knight of Nike, Pablo Picasso, Sarah Blakely of Spanx fame, Steve Jobs, Warren Buffett, the Oracle of Omaha. Rich brand, poor brand, how to unleash your David in the world of Goliaths. Rich brand, poor brand, how to unleash your David in the world of Goliaths. How to unleash your David in the world of Goliaths. Rich brand, poor brand, how to unleash your David in the world of Goliaths. Rich brand, poor brand, how to unleash your David in the world of Goliaths.
I love that. How did you get that done? Because it's not only acting, you've got the song is, has everything to perfection in there. How did you put that together? And I'm sure it was a labor of love.
It was completely a ridiculous labor of love. It's like I had to kind of get up early and stay and work late and kind of just fit it in between actual work.
Right.
But it was like let me back up a few steps and give context. I was a drummer when I was in my teens.
Oh
Okay.
my God.
I have always loved music. And my musical tastes are everything from Motown to James Brown to the Beatles to Michael Jackson to Miles Davis to progressive rock. I have the most eclectic combination that you would like never find anywhere. I've still yet to throw away my 700 CD collection. I'm pointing back here because it's actually I have it in the furnace room. A 700 CD. I still refuse to part with them. Okay.
I know.
But it's just so with that, music is something that I enjoy, and it's also something that I think with. There are certain things like songs that are just repetitive, the same thing. It could have a great hook, but if it's just a hook and then a verse and the hook and the verse and the hook and the verse, it's a little boring. So you always got to interject. There's got to be a little tension, a change of key or change of pitch or change of rhythm or something, so as to have a little bit of tension. And I take those principles and I apply those principles with regard to brands, their narratives, and all of that. And so this was, I always look at, well, there are official music trailers for, movies and stuff. Why the hell not my book? Why not? I mean, come on. And that's how it came about. And so I really just started to, and with a name like Rich Brand, Poor Brand, because this is just another backstory point. The working title for the book had been for about a year and a half, The Bigger Brand, because there is a concept that, a bigger brand really, it's not about the size, it's not about your revenue, it's not about the number of people, and it's not even about, it's the actions that you take that actually will separate you from the rest. Now, so that while that was a workable title, it was 100% forgettable. I mean, I asked myself the brutal question as I was getting close to finishing the book: how many times will someone have to hear The Bigger Brand before they actually remember it? And my disgusting answer was probably at least 100, because it was just, it was fine, and descriptive, but not memorable. So that's when I developed Rich Brand, Poor Brand. And every time I mentioned that to people, they just started laughing their asses off. Rich Brand, Poor Brand, and especially How to Unleash Your David in a World of Goliaths. So the whole title worked brilliantly well. So I was like, how the hell can I not have a freaking music video?
And it's so wonderfully done. I mean, I'm blown away. But let's start with music as the metaphor for branding.
Yeah.
And for those of you listening, by the way, I'm a fifth generation drummer in my family.
No way. No way.
I swear we were separated at birth.
What's your favorite time signature?
Oh, geez. I mean, I like 3/4. Anything that can be done in rock and roll, that is 3/4 time, because Rush does it, and also Backbeats. Rush is my favorite band simply because it's jazz in heavy metal.
Yeah,
that's why I like it.
Yeah.
So let's use that as a metaphor as we go forward here, since you and I are both into music. Certain bands, and you can apply this to being an entrepreneur, business owner, whatever. Certain bands, the moment you hear them for the first time, you realize they're either a garage band, a studio band, or they're a stadium band. And the first time I heard Linkin Park, this is a band that's meant to play in stadiums right away.
Yeah.
Whereas, if you listen to Steely Dan album, Asia, when that first came out, that is so tight. That is not a stadium band. That's a studio band. And
that's a total studio band. It's an amazing album, but total studio band.
And so I want to apply this. And folks, if you're listening, if you're a small business owner and you don't look at the brand experience that you're giving customers, listen up on this episode, because we're going to talk about how you grow into your brand. So you might as well start big as far as I'm concerned. So,
Yeah.
Maestro, please take us away on this one.
Well, and so what was that? So I mean, I was so enthralled with your breakdown. What was the question? What was the question that you had?
How I would say applying, as you see bands, what kind of an entrepreneur are you going to be when you create your brand? Are you going to create a brand that looks corporate, big? Maybe you have 30 employees, or do you want to look like you have 3,000 employees? And positioning that brand to grow into, I think, is incredibly important. And so
Yes.
I'm asking you, how do you develop, someone who's listening to the show right now, who's maybe a small business owner, one person, but wants to grow into a multi-million dollar company? How do you start with the brand? And
Yeah,
explain what branding is, by the way.
totally. Okay. All right. So a couple of things. So first of all, even to this day, sometimes I'll be talking to a CEO or an entrepreneur, and the topic of their brand comes up. And even to this day, I still will hear occasionally, "Oh, we have a logo." I'm like saying, that's like saying, "Are you interested in a new car?" And your response is, "Well, I have a steering wheel." That is such a small part. It is one component of, it is not the entirety of. Now, granted, I can understand how people come to that conclusion, because when we refer to great brands that we all know, whether you look at a Nike or you look at Apple or you look at a Liquid Death or Tesla or whatever, one of the
Right.
things we know about many of them is their logo. So I get that. But here's what branding actually is. Branding, and when I wrote the book that preceded the Rich Brand Poor Brand, that was called and is called that is called Brand Intervention. Now, brand intervention was an outgrowth of after 3.5 decades of working with companies of all sizes and CEOs of all pedigrees, from CEOs who were new, just out of school, to CEOs that had been running a global brand for 3 decades, 4 decades, 5 decades, and they all had, remarkably, the same blind spots. The only reason, the only reason that I found sort of concluded how that was possible was because there's what I call the proximity factor. Like, I can say, like, you could be brilliant at solving another person's problem or another business
Right.
problem, but when it comes to your own, it's the proximity. It's like all of a sudden your IQ drops in half, and you're like, well, you can't see shit from, you can't see your elbow, ass from your elbow, and
Right, right.
so we're so brilliant with solving others. So I call it the proximity factor. And so and anytime I discounted the things that I routinely would cover, in going over, because I'm very educational in the way that I work with clients, I will groove them in. I will say, this is why we're doing this next piece. I don't just dictate and show up like some prima donna. I
Right.
go, hey, here's the problem. They're oftentimes looking at symptoms, and those are symptoms. Like, I love when someone says, well, we don't have that in the budget. And I say, well, lack of money is not a cause. Lack of money is a symptom, which is more
Right.
reason why you need to do this, right?
Yes.
But the thing is that anytime I would discount it and go, oh my God, so and so, Ralph or Sarah or whatever the hell their names are, they absolutely know this. They've been in business too long. Anytime I did that, it was invariably in the next 24 to 72 hours, it would surface, that blind spot would surface, and it would bite me in the ass. So brand intervention was literally the 33 steps to building a brand. But as I was doing it, I personally had a pet peeve, in parallel. I was frustrated with the books that were out there. The books that were out there were these brilliant, smart books. Great. Whether you're talking Seth Godin, you're talking Simon Sinek, you're talking about the Blue Ocean dudes, whatever you want to take your pick. But the bottom line is there were 300 pages there, and always there were 10 pages buried in there that was what I called the shit that I came to get. Right?
Right.
Well, they signed me up for a treasure hunt. I personally signed up for the answer. Okay, so at least they would have been nice for them to show me the respect to say, "Hey, David, by the way, if you're just here to get the answer, go to page 172." Okay.
Right.
Instead, they're making me read the whole freaking thing, And that was annoying. And I mentioned that on podcasts, and people, that's a frustration for people, especially those of us that like to get shit done. So
Right.
I wanted to bring it down to simplicity. And the one thing that I know, you've been in business long enough, I've been in business long enough, false experts make shit complex. True experts make stuff simple, right?
Brilliant. Yeah.
So the thing is that I was like, you know what? I went to Amazon.com. I typed in branding and looked on the books. At the time that I started Brand Intervention, there were over 6,500 books on
Wow.
branding. Over 6,500. Now there's well over 25,000 books on the topic of branding. So my thing was like, that's bullshit, right? That's not workable. So I simply said to myself, what does branding really come down to? And it came down to actually a 4-word definition: the art of differentiation.
Wow. The
And the
art
thing is
of
that
differentiation. Repeat
yep,
that.
branding is the art of differentiation.
Wow.
And the thing about that is, I mean, that is what branding actually is. And I go over that and I show you exactly what is the antithesis of that. What are the barriers to achieving that? Which people, I remember earlier in my career when people go, we're a newer, younger company and we want to be just like IBM or we want to be like 3M. They would name some big, and everyone kind of defaults to that. That's why we hear in pitches people saying, well, we're the next Uber of, right? Everyone's always aspiring to being the next great big. Well, you know what? Imitation means you're going to sound like. You're always going to
Yeah.
be compared against. And Sally Hogshead, she said, different is better than better. Now, she was right in what she said. I have a completely different interpretation than she does of what those words mean. She meant different is better than better. Embrace your uniqueness. I'm like, well, that's wonderful if you're going for like the wonderful weekend retreat and you want to like, gaze on your navel. I was approaching it from a different standpoint. When we are involved in business, we can either play the better game, like, oh, we're better than all the other options that you're looking at. The problem with that, though, is that keeps me in the same category as all these other things.
Right.
What if I want to actually be my own category? What if I want to be the king of my own freaking mountain?
Right.
Right? So to me, different is better than better will always win. It's why you and I notice the brands that we notice, the ones that stand out. It's why Microsoft's stupid retail stores failed. I remember shortly after Apple did theirs and they were unique, and all of a sudden Microsoft totally basically just copies it. There's no
Right.
soul. There's no soul to it. It was completely surface. It was
Yeah.
skin deep only. And I remember walking by in the Mall of America. There was the Apple store and the Microsoft store. Not only did they copy the look and the feel and the cleanliness and the bold colors and this and that, the other, but they also like positioned themselves. I don't think they were 300 feet away. So they tried to like pick up on some of the Apple aura. And when you went by, I remember walking by one time to just show how clueless they were. All their staff were standing in the store trying to somehow feel relevant, knowing that they weren't because they were just going through the motions. And they literally were doing this. They were doing, and that's what they were doing to get attention. It's like, that's all you had. So there's your answer with regard to what is branding.
I love that you put it that way because one of my favorite stories is McDonald's and Burger King.
Mhm.
And we know what McDonald's represents, but Burger King is the opposite. And they did something that was kind of weird, but it likens it to the Apple Microsoft issue here. And that is their strategy for a long time. Burger King's strategy for a long time was wherever a McDonald's opened up, they would open a Burger King on the same block. They
Yeah.
did it on purpose. It was as a constant. Now, as you know, they are very different than McDonald's. They had a bigger burger, the Whopper, and it was flame broiled. And they used to have the flame grill right in the front of the the kitchen area, so you could see it. And so people wanted to go inside. So, folks, if you're listening and you want to be like that brand, think different, be different. And I think Sally Hogshead is probably one of the best examples because on her business card, she's she put on there, what's a hogshead? A unit of measurement, blah blah blah. And then she had a little snarky thing on the end. What does your name mean? It was sort of like, because people always ask, your name is Hogshead. That's kind of and this is something I like. She has a sense of humor and she put it in her brand. So that's a
Exactly.
great one. Yeah.
Exactly.
So the thing I wanted to get to is, I had some friends reach out to me and they're keynote speakers like me. You go on stage, you have your own PowerPoint, and my PowerPoints always looked, professional. I'm a designer. So they said, "Hey, can you fix our PowerPoint?" And they were doing what every amateur hour does. Even though they were making good money doing speeches, they weren't fixing what they were doing. They would design logos in Word. Their graphics were small and they'd have a lot of white space, which was a big no-no from back in the day when we actually used slides. And all I did was bolden the graphics, put their logo in the bottom corner so it had a match dissolve to it. And immediately, they looked like a pro.
Right.
And they didn't see the difference. This is what drives me nuts. They didn't see the difference. We're in a day and age now where amateurs are able to get their hands on professional tools. And they're standing there going, "Look, I made my logo." And it goes back to that. It's an experience. Your brand should immediately conjure up an experience in your customer's mind every single time. Am I correct on that one?
Well, absolutely. But I want to add one bit of caution. Branding isn't lipstick. Branding isn't, oh, that's a nice little pin to put on my lapel. It's not an accessory. Branding is freaking deep.
It is.
Design serves the brand. Imagery serves the brand. Music serves the brand. Story serves the brand. The brand must have a soul. It must have depth to it. And that's why brands can, and now there's a gazillion different flavors of brands. You can be a hardcore traditional brand. You could be a craftsman type brand, like in terms of like really craft. We're about the craft. You could be like the grizzled sort of like one of my favorite. What the hell is that? One of the I think it's a great brand as far as how they advertise themselves. But Duluth Trading has great
Right.
ads because there's this guy. Whenever you look at Duluth Trading. And if you're not familiar with their ads, I would say just go to YouTube. They have these brilliant 15-second black and white ads that are hysterical. They never show the product, right? Like whereas everybody else shows the product. So if they did what everybody else did, it's like they're going to now have to say, yeah, unlike theirs, ours is better. But you cannot forget them. At the same time, there's this voice. There's a guy that says, "Hi, Duluth Trading. Welcome to us." So you hear this grizzly guy. You can just imagine him, with a wrench and overalls. I mean, just the voice alone. And so every bit, every bit and touch is part of the brand. And if you've got a store or location, how people are, feel when they're actually there.
Yeah.
Are they digging it? Are they not digging it? Are they confused? Are you helpful? Are you salesy, pitchy? I mean, what's your deal? Liquid Death has done a brilliant job of freaking putting water in cans,
Yeah.
in such a rebellious, defiant way. But man, they are like the poster child for differentiation.
Yeah. It's true. Well, let's go through the steps of creating a brand, because honestly, when I do it, I have to do a brand analysis. And anybody who's listening, you hit the nail on the head. It's not just the logo. It's the experience. It's your systems. When you walk into a McDonald's, you know what a number one is and a number two and a number three. That's part of their brand. Your process, the way you've trained your employees to greet customers, the way the maybe your shop looks when you walk in. Those are all part and parcel of it. And let's begin with that. What do you start with when you sit with a client? Do you sit and ask where they're falling down and where they need to be picked up, or how do you do it?
Well, I always start out with, obviously, so why are we here? If we're sitting and we're talking about this, let's get some clarity. Why are we talking?
Right.
What's the problem? What is the problem that you are wanting to solve? Now, the reason that I ask that is because the answer may actually be the answer of what they're trying to solve. Or it may show a really shallow mentality to what the brand is. They may say, well, we want more cash flow. That to me, that's chasing symptoms, okay? We want more followers. We want more engagement on our social posts. That's chasing symptoms,
Right.
okay? So that to me is part of it, that I'm sitting and I'm asking the questions. I am very much interviewing their brand IQ, to be honest, to see, do they get it, or are they, or do they have, because you can't build a castle on freaking quicksand.
Right.
And so that's the first thing. And I always, and I find this hysterical. I know you've been around as much as I have been around. So I roll my eyes when I hear of these global consultancies that will do a 300-page study interviewing the entire employee base. What the hell is your freaking insight? To hear what they think, that they've been indoctrinated or not indoctrinated, what they've either the rules that they've agreed to or not agreed to, or have been pounded into their skull. What's the insight? There is no insight. And first of all, lastly, that's not where the brand, that's where the brand comes to life. But where the brand lives is out there in the world. And that is like, that distinction, I just want to punch up. Your brand comes to life internally. Where your brand lives is externally.
Brilliant.
And that's the thing. So I always look, okay, now that once I have done that initial questioning, that little very gentle interrogation, I basically then go, all right, now, who are your competitors? That's another question that I ask, because sometimes I'll get really ridiculous questions like, well, it's Aston Martin and they've got a freaking Yugo. I'm like, that also shows me a level of unreality.
Disconnect. Yeah.
A total disconnect. So I'm seeing what do I have here? Do I have the mental capacity to understand, and how much am I going to have to educate them as we go along? Then after those are done, I then look at, all right, once we've narrowed down a legitimate list of competitors, I look at the level of noise out there. That's why my website is called risingabovethenoise.com. It is rising. It is literally, we need to rise above the noise, that white noise that's out there that everyone's trying to like clamor to get heard.
Yeah.
And so that's where I start. And from there, we then work inward. Once they know what they want to achieve, I start outward and work inward. Most companies, when they're doing branding or rebranding, make the mistake of looking inward as though they're going to discover something. You know what? All I need is your freaking goal. Do you have a clear goal? Do you want to be the best? Can you be the best? Are you able to deliver on that? And what do you want? What do you want to have happen in the lives of the people that you're serving? And if I have those answers to those 4 questions, I don't need to speak, other than the only other time that I do speak to internal staff is when I want to get some insight on, okay, I want to speak to some of your front lines people who are actually doing selling, who are actually that are speaking with actual customers. I want to hear what the objections are, what the confusions are on the part of customers, so I really get a proper snapshot of what the situation is.
You said not only a mouthful, but I think people misconstrue when they hire a creative brand director that it's really a business consultant. It's just on things you probably don't think a creative director is in charge of. And I have several clients right now where I'm designing their brand from scratch, and then I lean in and I said, you need to go do this with your business first, and then we'll put that in the magazine, we'll announce it. And they're looking at me like, what? They think I'm like the best kept secret in the universe. And it's like, no, you have to be, as a creative person, a successful creative person, be able to combine the business side of things, understand the external pressure that's coming from other competitors. What colors are they using? What are they doing right? What are you doing different compared to them? What can you do to maneuver and retool what you're doing? This all comes under the heading of what we do as a brand ambassador, trying to help these clients break out of the mold. And I find the work exciting. I mean, you obviously do too, because you've been doing it for how many decades?
Yeah.
It's just a lot of fun. And here's the thing I love doing is watching how big brands screw up. And right now, when we're recording this, we have to talk about Jaguar. Oh, sorry, Jaguar. That's how you're supposed to say it.
Yeah, Jaguar,
Yeah,
Jaguar. I'm like,
Jaguar.
because I still, I'm like, I don't know who came up with that pronunciation. It's certainly not American.
Well, it's like Stewie is calling it, pronouncing the H in Cool Whip. It's Cool Whip, Ryan. You know.
I have to. You just reminded me. I spoke with an Australian client last week,
Yeah,
and
crikey.
we were talking, and they said I want to talk to you about Adidas. I said, excuse me. I said what? They said Adidas. I said, what the hell are you talking about? They go, the sneaker. I said, Adidas? And they said, oh yeah, that's right. That's how you Americans say it. I said, no, that's how it's said. I said, there's no Adidas sounds like a sort of a mathematical, device of like an Adidas, some advanced little relic from some, long
Yeah.
ago civilization. But yes.
I missed a tour for the Bacardi rum distillery in Puerto Rico because I'm standing there and they're saying Bacardi, Bacardi, you going to Bacardi? I had no idea what they're talking about. They pronounce Bacardi Bacardi. And it's just,
I
so
know.
I understand. So let's talk about Jaguar because they came out with an LGBTQ, brightly colored, beautiful stuff and completely destroyed their brand in half a second. And I feel brands, they do need to align with today's newer consumer, but Jaguar really missed the mark on this because
Well,
they have,
so did Bud Light. I mean, so did
oh
Bud Light.
God, yeah, yes.
Yeah.
Understanding your customer, I think, is incredibly important. And you were talking about cancel culture in an article that you wrote, which we'll touch base on. But where do you think they messed up? And I'll give you my 2 cents on it, but I want to hear your opinion on this.
Let's see. Everywhere. I mean, bottom line is that what, and I've said this publicly. I first of all, I gave it, I lambasted the hell out of it on LinkedIn, and which got over 360,000 impressions and a lot of very passionate interaction and ideas.
Yeah.
They were probably out of whatever the enormous amount and quantity of responses there probably were like 3 or 4 who were like, this might be a genius move, this might be right. And I'm like, but the bottom line is the only reason I mention that is because that percentage is about the percentage of the people that they're appealing to. That my minuscule,
Tiny, yeah.
the tiny microscopic audience. It was so off brand. And I said last week, either this is the worst rebrand in the history of branding, period. Absolutely stupid, off mark, does not even connect to its brand, is irrelevant as Delaney, whatever that Canadian spokesperson was for Bud Light. That was absolutely equally stupid.
Yeah.
It just was. It's the wrong freaking audience. It's like
Right.
that has its place. Word has its place, but that's just not the right place. And and I said either it's the stupidest thing or it's a genius move and it's a prank, and the CEO and everybody's going to go because today is the day. Today's the day in Miami. There already were a few photos. I checked this morning. I was curious. Did Jaguar release anything? And there were a few shots of their electric vehicles. Personally, I think it's going to be a complete bomb.
Yeah.
I mean, I saw these. It's like they're just spitting on the grave of their heritage and their legacy. But if it's legit, it's stupid. Meaning, if they really thought this was a serious play. If it's a prank, where they're basically going, hey, we actually have had more people talk about Jaguar in the last 2 weeks than in the last 50 years. And now we go, gotcha, and we made you all look, and here we go, and we're actually unleashing something amazing. Then it's a genius move. But it was so off-brand, it was insane, to the point where I saw comments such as, "I have a Jaguar and now I want to sell it." I had placed an order
Right.
prior to this commercial and I've canceled it. I mean, people had very strong reactions.
Wow. Well, I want everybody to know, when you're a creative director, you have to look at trends, and are those trends aligned with the brand? And it's not a judgment on anybody in the LGBTQ community, because I've aligned brands for those groups, because they aligned with them. But Jaguar, I think what happened is their creative director, or the person who was in charge of saying yes to all this, was in a bubble and of his own, this is what I like, and this is what I want to put out there, and this is trending. And it's only, 3% of the population, okay,
Yep.
mostly in the United States. So,
Yep.
okay, what's going on here? So, as a creative director, our job is to not allow our personal stuff to be projected into the brands we're working on. Instead, we have to turn that off like a reporter, a good journalist, going into the field and collecting all this data and saying to ourselves, okay, these particular customers love sophistication. They love to be elitist. They don't like to be a part of the crowd. They are worth millions and billions. And we're not talking middle echelon millions. We're talking upper echelon millions. The logo is simple and sophisticated. Anybody who's done high-end design, it's simple. There's always a few people out there that want to fill negative space, and those people are not who they're selling to. And I think they could have gotten away with doing a very sophisticated commercial where they show the type of Jaguar owners. And you have this stuffy older man who's driving and he has his nose up in the air. And then you have the younger rapper maybe who's driving and he's like, this is a Jaguar. And then maybe you have one person who really represents LGBTQ, who's the drag queen, the big popular one right now, RuPaul.
RuPaul.
Yeah, I think it's RuPaul. Have a shot of RuPaul with his sunglasses on, driving a Jaguar, and you have these slices of life of the Jaguar experience.
Right.
I think that would have been a better way to really show off how the brand is becoming a little modern, but still sophisticated, wealthy, and high end. Just my take on it.
Yeah. No, it's they ended up having an enormous misfire. Enormous misfire.
And Bud Light too. I mean, these are lessons, folks. If you've ever read anything by Al Reese and Jack Trout and Al Reese, the 22 immutable laws of marketing, the 22 immutable laws of branding, you'll understand how these brands have made big mistakes. Bud Light, aligning with Dylan Mulvaney, I think.
Yep, that's right. Dylan Mulvaney.
Dylan Mulvaney was a huge faux pas because Bud Light is drank by construction workers, New Yorkers. If you go to Yankee Stadium, I don't know how it is now, but they would sell Bud Light constantly. They'd do it here at Raiders Stadium, as well as the Golden Knights, T-Mobile Arena. So they missed their brand, their mark.
Totally.
And it can cost you a lot of money. I'm just gonna say it. Your personal opinion about your brand can cost you a lot of money. Like you said, you're too close. That's why you have to hire somebody like you.
Yeah, exactly. It's true. It's true.
What has been your favorite client to work with through the years? Because I have mine, but what is your favorite?
In terms of a specific client, or in terms of a type of client, or what's the?
You can go either or. You can go specific or you can go type, because you've worked on enough of these bigger brands to just go, I have my faves.
Well, I'll give you both sides of the coin, because I think that's where it makes the most amount of sense. The clients that are most satisfying to work with are the ones where there's an actual collaboration and there's a recognition of I was brought in for a reason. I wasn't brought in to be your hands and for you to micromanage. That is the worst. That is hands down the
Right.
worst. That's where I'm like, here's your money back. No, this isn't how it goes, because that's like, that would be like, okay, let's get the Beatles or Prince or James Brown or Bruno Mars or whoever the hell you want to pick, and then have them come in as a studio musician. Now you tell them what to do and how to play. Are you kidding me? Are you out of your freaking mind? They were brought in because of their genius and their
Right.
ability to see things and hear things that neither you nor I can see or hear. So, so the most satisfying ones are the ones that actually really embrace that nuance. That's one layer. The other layer is this, and this was something that I learned or recognized fully only about 2 years ago. I have had probably every flavor of client that one could possibly want. From from wonderful and gracious and very philanthropic and very humanitarian and very benevolent, to very narcissistic, to egocentric, to can't wait to like get the hell out of that room kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is those are traits and characteristics. But with those being said, the most satisfying client is a client. They are, and I worked with them. I worked with the CEO in his prior company, and then he sold that. Could have never worked another day in his life. Retired for 5 days, and then started a new company. Now it's a $5 or $6 billion company. But it was when we were out to lunch 2 or 3 years ago, and we were having lunch, and he said, "David," he goes, "I want to thank you." And I said, "For what?" He goes, "I was able to make a $50 million donation to causes that I support, and that would not have been possible without you."
Wow.
That immediately I realized I was, holy shit, because the most dissatisfying clients on the opposite end of the spectrum are the ones where the only thing they care about is how many zeros and commas that are going into their pocket. It
Right.
never goes out and is used to better or improve anything. So that literally is kind of like the two ends of the spectrum.
Yeah. I've had clients like that. My favorite clients to work with are the ones that just let me do what I do best. And when I present them, they have a little pushback. I want that. The worst is when I have somebody who's too attached to their brand and they won't let go.
Yeah.
I recently had that in Denver, Colorado. My girl and I, we were working up there, and this guy, he was trying to be everything. He bought e-commerce. He had e-vehicles. He specialized in e-vehicles, but in 4 years, he hadn't had one sale. He hadn't had one, piece of sale on an MVP, his most viable product. And we helped him develop that product. And then I went to change his brand and he got furious with me. He designed his logo in Word, number one. And number two, it looked like it was a local pizzeria, not to mock anybody who has a local pizzeria logo, but he wasn't willing to grow his brand, both business wise and the image we were trying to project into the community in up in Denver.
Yeah.
And so we wound up just walking away because clients like that, I don't know how you handle them, but I just kind of go, "We're done. You're fired."
Yeah. Yeah. I basically just say, with where you are, I don't see how I can actually help and benefit you. I that's basically how I do it.
Yeah. Well, he's going to go out of business soon because there's only so much sustainability you can have.
Yeah.
C'est la vie. I want to talk about Rich Brand, Poor Brand. This is brilliant. The book is based on confident. There's the cover, baby. The book is based on confidential. The book is based on a confidential internal memo from Nike that listed out their qualities of the kind of culture they needed to build their empire. It came down to 20 distinct traits any business can master with insights from Warren Buffett, Steve Jobs, Jason Pfeiffer of Entrepreneur Magazine, Sarah Blakely, Brene Brown, Billy Joel, Kevin Hart, Marie Forleo, and Gary Vaynerchuk. And I love what Damon John said. He said the new book is genius, baby. So let's dig into a little bit of this. What can readers expect from this this what you created? And it's a beautiful book, by the way. Internally, externally, it's a fun book.
Yeah, yeah. Well, first of all, for those that are watching, I mean, just because so you don't just have to take our word for it. This is an example. Like this is the size of type, guys. Okay,
So
it's
guys who are our age can read it.
it's 36. It's 36 point. But I mean, but here these are the chapter openers, right?
It's beautiful.
These are the chapter openers, and they're like this really took me back to growing up in New York, and like the artwork I would see in Soho galleries,
Yes.
and it's like, I mean, and it's also there's a cultural fun and relevance. I mean, even this one, since when would be like Elaine? It shrinks, and Jerry says like a frightened turtle. Now, anybody who knows Seinfeld knows that this is a very particular episode. But this talks about shrinkage in terms that's the wrong direction for your brand and what to do. And every chapter ends with rich brand, poor brand. The rich brand does this, the poor brand does that. It is not theoretical. It's also not in the weeds of like, hey, you want to increase your followers, start, do a listicle, do something that says like 9 ways, blah, 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 blah. And it's not the little shallow stuff, because I don't find that empowers. This is designed to basically, if you've got a group, whether your group is made up of 2 people, 20 people, 50 people, or 1,000 people, this gets you all on the same page. And to that point, because I think this gives the context, I'm just going to look. I mean, when you get into the book, this is the first thing you see, right here. That's the first thing you see.
There's nothing new in this book.
Okay, it looks like spray paint. And here's what it says, just to give context. It says, what's new is how fast your company can be transformed to dramatically unleash your brand's potential. Brand intervention showed how to successfully build a brand by looking where others weren't and seeing what others didn't, and leveraging those insights to eliminate that sea of sameness so many brands drown in. Rich Brand, Poor Brand takes it further, helping you craft a culture capable of sustaining the brand you've built. The culture your brand builds needs to thrive on ideas and communities to create the kind of environment that enjoys ingenuity for breakfast, inspiration for dinner, and courage for dessert. This is all about unleashing your David in a world of Goliaths. David had a slingshot and kicked Goliath's ass. How? By what he had? No. He was smaller. He had fewer resources. He was less muscular. Yet his success was based on the strongest weapon others underestimated, his ingenuity. It was David's ingenuity that opened the eyes of those around him and opened the doors of opportunity to achieve what nobody else thought was possible. You can do the same. That basically just gives you the vibe and the flavor. It's how the book is set up and written. And and one, I don't even know if I showed you this. I'm gonna show you the contents page, because this is sick. This is the contents page.
Oh my God, that is how you do it. It's like a mind map.
Yeah,
That is cool.
And it's like, and the thing about it, and the chapter titles, the power of love, not all differences are the same, fanatical intention, true expertise versus bullshit. I don't care WTF the piano sounds like. It's like, and that, by the way, that's a great one, because you're into music. That's literally the backstory of Keith Jarrett when he did the Cone concert, which is the #1 selling solo jazz album ever done, and that was recorded in 1975. But he had to overcome a hell of a lot of shit and barriers. And then it continues: the law of expansion, how to see around corners, creating a company of giants, ideas have direction. These are the titles. So this is getting everyone to look at. This isn't just about me showing up, because I think we've gotten into a place in culture and in business that everyone's watching out for themselves. And that's to the detriment of all of us.
It is.
As an example, you go into a room, you go into two businesses. This business over here, this has 20 people, and this one over here has 20 people. This first business over here, this has 20 people, and they're all only looking out for themselves. They're only doing their work that they need to do. That's it. Then you go into this other room, and everyone's there watching out for one another, for how we collectively do better, how we add greater value and service to those outside of our organization. Which one do you think you're going to feel bigger in? Which one do you think where your potential is going to come to life? The first one or the second one?
You know, you said a mouthful. It's brand culture. You know, what is your culture? What problem are you getting clear about solving? And one of the things that I love, David, is these younger brands that disrupt markets. And I'll use the shaving arena for men as one of them. You know, you know what the problems are with shaving. The blades are expensive. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And so two brands came along over the past 15 years that disrupted the market. And the one was Headblade by Todd Green. Todd was a graphic designer who he had to shave his head because he was going bald at an early age. So everything to shave your head on a Friday night started with whiskey and several, blades. And so he just created this little almost like a track car with a shaver on it and a little divot to hold your finger in place, and you could do it super fast. And he took it to every single shaving company from Gillette to Schtick. They just, none of them wanted it. And so he got some investors and he launched it himself, and he aligned with the UFC fights. They were all shaving their heads there for a while. And then the second brand that I love was Dollar Shave Club. Their commercials were hilarious.
Yeah.
And I love how a smaller brand nowadays can make a huge impact with a lot of simple tools, such as a YouTube video, getting on Shark Tank, getting the right investors. It's like the world is very different than when you and I first started doing this work. And what do you find exciting about working with young brands?
Well, as long as they're young and with conviction and don't have the disease of trying to fit in.
Yeah.
I mean, because that's why a brand like Liquid Death could do what it does. That's why a brand like Midday Squares, I mean, those guys are insane. Midday Squares out of their freaking minds, out of Canada. I mean, they came in, it's like, did you know? And it was very funny how did you know, we came along because there were only like 3 basic companies that actually kind of had dominated the space. There was Hershey's, and there was this, and there was that. And the bottom line is we wanted a chocolate for the rest of us. And it's like, and it's a wife. It's a woman who is the wife of one of the co-owners and is the brother and is the sister of one of the other co-owners. So it's the 3 of them, and each of them is more insane than the other. And they have the most foul-mouthed podcast. They just F-bomb. They make Gary V look like a nun. Okay, it's unbelievable. But that kind of brazen. Now, and I say that with this caveat. It's not like you've got to be brazen. You've got to just shock people. No, you've got to just do what you're doing with conviction. There are people who, hey, Warren Buffett has conviction, and he's the most down-to-earth, laid-back dude there is, but he's got conviction. Just own your lane and don't be so obsessed with trying to fit in and trying to not upset anybody. Because here's a gem for everyone. It's not haters that you need to be concerned about. It's freaking indifference. Indifference is good. If you want to freaking look death in the mirror, that's indifference. Put something out there and nobody basically gives a shit. right? It's
I
much
like how
better.
you said no one cares. No one gives a shit.
I mean, seriously. I mean, it's like, look, oh, yeah, look, if you get a 50-50, you drop something, you go, okay, it's like 50 people, are passionately in love with what you've done and 50 passionately hate. Okay.
Yeah,
I'd rather have that than have indifference.
I agree. Oh my God. You hit the nail on the head, man. When I did the creative brief for Awakened Nation, I did it in 20 minutes. I couldn't believe it. It was the fastest breakdown I've ever done in my life. It can take a month to put together a really good, and then I set very hard boundaries of who could be on the show and who shouldn't be on the show.
Yeah.
And I literally had people call me up and go, "Oh, this guy would be a great fit." And I go, "No, they would not." This is not a sales show. Okay. You're not promoting your stuff. We're going to have a deep dive, a real conversation. And,
Yeah. Yeah.
with the brand, I love that they're swearing on their podcast. It's the podcast for the rest of us.
Yeah. No, they're whacked. They're whacked.
Yeah.
And so, to me, it's just, I think we live in such a world of so much is pre-packaged, sort of, okay, we happily iterated,
Yeah.
and I would advise those who are needing to create a brand or reinvent their brand, if they're at that place, is don't look at reiterating. There's a question that I ask that I will share here when I'm working on rebrands. If we were to start your brand today, is this what we would be doing?
Mm.
That helps them kind of separate out from holding on to the past, clutching it to their bosom, like it's some family member, right?
Right.
And
Right.
so, like, if we were starting this today, based on what you know today, all the new information, the new market information, the new opportunities, et cetera, is this the brand we would create? That helps get people over the knee-jerk obsession to want to hold on to and maybe not do too much. It's like, you know what? If it's time for a rebrand, it's time for a rebrand.
Yeah. That and go out and read the E-Myth and get the hell out of your business and work on your business. Uh,
Exactly.
Ladies and gentlemen, reach out to David Brier. He is a genius, a brand Meister brand, the Brandfather, as you're called. And pick up his book, Rich Brand, Poor Brand: How to Unleash Your David in a World of Goliaths. Where do we get a hold of you? What website should we go to? Where should we go?
Definitely. You can go to Rising, RISING, risingabovethenoise.com. I'm on LinkedIn a lot. I do drop stuff on some of the other social platforms, but LinkedIn is a lot of my jam, where a lot of my stuff is shared and stuff like that. But risingabovethenoise.com, I have a weekly newsletter that I drop gems with as well. And so definitely I would say that. And if there's any way that I can help any of the folks that you're interested in, that are listening, feel
Yeah.
free to reach out.
Get in there. As Tony Hsieh used to say, your culture is your brand. And David is the man to help you do that, to elevate your brand to a completely different level. You won't recognize your company a few years from now. So please reach out to him. Thank you, my friend, for being on Awakened Nation. I really appreciate this conversation.
Oh, absolutely, man. I had a blast. It was totally it was kind of like talking to an old friend, even though we've just not known each other for very long.
That's how it's supposed to be. This is a weird trait that I got from my grandfather and my mother, and I can sit down and in 5 minutes, meet a total stranger and we're best friends all of a sudden. I don't know. It's built into me. I don't know what it is,
It's a,
but
it's
thank you.
a it's a good quality that there's not enough of that around the U.S. So if you can bottle that shit, we'll brand it together. We'll come up with a good name for it, and package it so it's gorgeous.
The Brad brand. I'm not letting you go yet. I usually do a lightning round where I ask three questions so my guests
Yep.
get to know you, so my audience gets to know you better. And
Yep.
the first question I'm going to ask you is, who's your favorite drummer?
Wow. Oh God, there's different periods. I'm not going to just say one. I love Bill Bruford. I think Bill
Oh
Bruford was a
yeah,
great.
yeah,
Bill
yeah.
Bruford was a great drummer. He no longer drums. He's kind of retired himself from that, but a great drummer. I also I love Carter Buford from Dave Matthews Band. I think he's a
Yeah,
brilliant drummer. He's
great
got a
stuff.
great groove. Dave Weckl, amazing. Dave from the Chicory Electric Band and all that, and just absolutely on point. And of course, no list like this. I mean, and yes, Ringo Starr. Yes, Ringo. I think he's the most underrated. I mean, he
Yes.
made choices. He made such deliberate choices, and I sometimes listen. I'm like, it fits in there so organically. You don't even realize that it's just the perfect choice of drums, the perfect sound, the perfect whatever. And then lastly, of course, no list would be complete without Steve Gadd,
Yeah.
especially during the era of, you know, Asia and he did so much great studio playing with many. But there's five I gave you.
Steve Gadd is on my list as well because he was probably on hundreds of studio albums back in the 70s and 80s.
Easily
And
hundred.
hundreds, yeah. And especially Steely Dan, where he's playing a riff and a solo, but you don't know he's playing a riff and a solo because it's going with the music.
Oh,
And you just, it's brilliant.
but even with what he did with Paul Simon with 50 Ways to Leave a Lover, to Leave You Lover. I mean that riff. I mean, I
Yeah, I
know,
know.
I know, that's perfect.
Catchy. My favorites are Neil Peart is number one.
Hmm.
I definitely like Billy Cobham. If you've ever seen a Billy Cobham,
I've seen him live.
yeah,
I've
he's
seen him live. Yeah.
incredible.
Yep.
Love his work. Gene Krupa, believe it or not, my grandfather was a big band era drummer,
Yep.
and so I was raised a little bit on Gene Krupa. A lot of Afro-Cuban rhythms my grandfather exposed me to
Yep.
as well. And I've seen Tito Puente live in concert as well.
Interesting.
Yeah, he
Interesting.
was a showman, but he could play. Holy crap. And I saw Buddy Rich when I was 16. My dad said to me, he joked, he said, "Do you want to go to the movies? Or I have tickets for this drummer. His name's Buddy Rich." I just look at my dad and go, what is wrong with you? You know, I want to see Buddy Rich. So Buddy Rich is on my list as
That is
well.
that is that is that is classic. And also there was if you were into the Mahavishnu Orchestra, Narada Michael Walden, who followed Billy Cobham. Michael Walden was amazing. He was
Wow.
an amazing, amazing player.
I gotta check that out. My second question is there something we should know that you love to do, but nobody knows that you love to do it?
God, that's a fascinating question. Um, pro- Probably what unless you're with me, probably what many people don't know, my wife definitely knows, is when I'm sitting and talking with people on the phone and I'm having a lengthy conversation, I might just doodle and there will be the kinds of doodles that will be, for those that don't know, there's a Spencerian script that was a wonderful form of lettering and a style of script. Um, and the most beautiful form that I personally enjoyed. I mean, I had the chance to meet Tom Carnesi and Tony DeSpina and Ed Bengat. I took courses with Ed Bengat. So all these lettering gods from New York City, and Tom Carnesi's version of Spencerian script was beautiful. So I doodle these things that when people see them, they lose their minds, right? They're like, what the hell? They're like, that's like a work of art, to the
Yeah.
point where I do every time one of my nieces or nephews has a birthday or in-laws has a birthday, I will do with different colored Sharpies, I'll do their name on the envelope. I have some of those relatives who have kept those for like the last 10 years. They're keeping the David Brier collection of these handlet because I just do them, right? So there.
You should have a museum opening, have all these up. Um, That's one of the reasons why I love Roger Black, because he just plays with typefaces and he hires all these typeface designers and things. I have
Exactly.
a great appreciation for using type as a design element. And a lot of
Yes.
people that is a lost art amongst graphic designers nowadays. At least I believe so. Could be
Well,
wrong.
Fred Woodward was probably the best editorial designer for a number of years when he was designing for Rolling Stone. He did the best. I literally have a collection. I probably have about. I have them stashed in a cupboard so they're not exposed to light. But I have collected them, probably about 25 or 50 different editions. When Fred was like a beast. He was doing stuff with typography, and he worked with custom designers, Dennis Ortez Lopez, and stuff like that, that really designed some major shit.
And by the way, folks, if you're listening to this and thinking, oh, what's the big deal? They were designing typefaces when it was done by hand.
That's right.
Okay. Just
That's
so
right.
you know,
That's
there
right.
weren't computers when we started. So T square and a light box.
Yes.
I remember those days. My third and final question is, do you have a favorite memory?
I don't know that it would be a favorite memory. It's certainly a fond memory of when I would paint in my bedroom. Because when I was in my teens, I was, and this actually leads to a very fond memory you just made me think of. So I I drew at a very young age, and by the
Mhm.
time I was in my teens, I was doing fine art,
Yeah.
paintings. I loved, Rembrandt and Da Vinci and Michelangelo and all. I loved those, and so I would paint, inspired very, very much by those. But my subject matter was, uh, you know, rock and roll legends and stars. Could be the Beatles or Jethro Tull or whatever. But the funny thing is, I never put the dates on my work. So I always had the idea for quite some years until I was doing all this painting when I was 18, 19 years old and stuff like that because I left home at 20 to move to Manhattan to start my career. And when I was about 36, I was rummaging through paintings that my mother never threw anything of mine away as far as artwork. She treasured and valued it. And I was looking and looking and looking, and I was always disappointed that I never put dates on the stuff. But I made sure that I put, when I was doing drawings with my daughter, we always put the date, the time, and everything. So it was like just perfectly documented.
Right.
I found this one, and this is the part this is a very fond memory. So I end up I find one painting that I actually managed to put the freaking date on it. And I looked at that and I did the math, and I was either 15 or 16 when I did it. And I was like three plus years off. I thought I was in my late teens, approaching 20. I was in my mid-teens. So I called on my mother. And for those that have not been exposed to New York culture, specifically New York Jewish culture, this is a slice of New York Jewish culture. I called up my mother because I was enthusiastic. I was like, Mom. She goes, What? I said, I was a freaking prodigy, right? Because this was like, I was shocked, right?
Right.
Like,
Right.
I was a freaking prodigy. And her response was this: I did the best that I could. I said, Mom, I'm not blaming you. I'm not blaming you, Mom. I said, this is my realization. It's not you.
Mom, do you know what prodigy means? I did the best I could. That is hilarious. What a great memory. That is a fond memory. And you get to
Yeah.
share it with your mom. Beautiful.
Exactly.
David, once again, thank you for being on Awakened Nation. We're going to have your website and everything in the show notes. Please pick up a copy of Rich Brand, Poor Brand. It's brilliantly done, laid out. Every part of it, every inch of it is awesome. And you will be the richer for it. Thank you, my friend.
Absolutely, man. My pleasure.
Hey, everybody, don't forget to tune in next week, and we're going to have another extraordinary guest here on Awakened Nation. Until then, bye-bye for now. Thank you so much for being a big part of the Awakened Nation movement. This is how you can help me and our extraordinary guests. If you guys enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe and share this episode out on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And let's grow this movement by word of mouth. Our success is because of you. Thank you, and see you next week.